What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us. As always, we are Biscuits and SEC. This is Biscuits and SEC Live. This is our 67th show. Hard to believe that we are at 67 shows now, but we've been doing this thing for over a year now, and we got a ton of fun stuff to talk about tonight. We've got the College Football Playoff Semifinals going on, and we also have a ton of transfer portal news. The transfer portal is as hot and as crazy as ever, so going to be a fun time talking that. We are your number one podcast for people who love the SEC and biscuits at the cross section of that. So
that is a fact.
That is absolutely a fact. Number one podcast. Look it up. I think ABC News reported that last week. Hammer, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Yeah, I'm excited for tomorrow night, Friday night, the semis, and then there will be two left. We'll be down to one game remaining, so soak it up. I'm ready to soak it up. I think I said that in the newsletter this past week or on Monday. I was like, hey, we got 3 games left. That's it.
Yeah, especially for you Ole Miss fans. Love every minute of this, and we are rooting for you. Right here at Biscuits and SEC, we are rooting for you guys. Last SEC team remaining, and what an unbelievable story it would be if the Rebs can pull it out. So before we get started tonight, as always, everybody, biscuitsandsec.com/newsletter, that newsletter that Hammer just alluded to. That is the Morning Biscuits newsletter. Comes to you every Monday and Friday during the season. Also comes to you guys on Wednesdays during the offseason. So we'll be switching over to our offseason schedule here in just a bit after we get past the national title game to our offseason schedule. But keeps you up to date on everything going on in the SEC, everything going on around college athletics as well. And from folks who read it, they say they love it. So we hope you guys will sign up. It's free to sign up. And that's about it for that. Let's get into some football, Hammer. I think we should start here with our semis preview. Let's just dig right into what's going on. I think we should save Ole Miss for second. So let's start with Indiana and Oregon. Indiana, a 3.5-point favorite. Indiana got the win earlier this year. Oregon's only loss of the regular season to Indiana. Do you think that Oregon has a better talent profile than Indiana, but it doesn't seem to matter for Indiana? Kirk Cignetti has this team. They're a machine right now, and we just saw what they did to Alabama, and looks like they're destined for the College Football Playoff title game. What are your thoughts on this game?
Very mixed because of what you just said. I look at what Indiana has done throughout the entire season, and including their trip to Eugene, where they won 30-20 on the road and threw a pick 6, which I wouldn't expect them to do in this game. So you look at that, and we talk about it all the time. But hey, if you can go on the road, you get a double-digit win against a top 5 opponent, and you handed them a touchdown. That's an extremely impressive thing to do. And I went ahead, since we've only got a couple games left, I pulled some stats and put them in our run sheet here. And then I highlighted the team in the matchup that, ranks higher in that statistical category. And just for the viewers out there, I did some pretty general ones, but I think important ones, right? So there's penalties against, total defense, total offense, turnover margin, third down conversion defense, third down conversion offense, sacks allowed, red zone defense, red zone offense. Indiana is better than Oregon in every single one of those categories with the exception of sacks allowed. So the Ducks' offensive line and a little bit of Dante Moore's mobility perhaps helping them there. So they've got a slight edge maybe on the offensive line. But everything else, Indiana is better than them in. Some of which it's very close. So, an example, total defense, Indiana's number 2, Oregon's number 6. So they're both really, really good on defense. Surprise, surprise, because they're one of the 4 teams left remaining. Similarly, turnover margin, Indiana's number 2, Oregon's number 16. So they're both very good at turning their opponents over and not turning it over themselves. Where we do see some statistical gaps here is in the red zone. So Indiana's red zone defense is stout. They only allow points 78% of the time, which is good enough for 29th. Oregon, 87% of the time. That's 100th. So be on the lookout for that in this matchup, right? That's a key in any game, obviously, but especially a game where the teams are pretty evenly matched. It's okay, who can still execute and make plays when the field gets tight and the space is limited. And then probably on third down, I would say Oregon's good on third down. They're 27th in the country, and this is offensively converting at 46%. It probably won't surprise you to know that Indiana's number one at 56%. So they are the best in the country at converting third downs. So there's a lot of stuff we can get into, but yeah, I find it very hard not to lean Indiana. I know there's, of course, the dynamic at play here where it's hard to beat a team twice, but what has Indiana shown this entire season that would lead me to believe that they're going to all of a sudden not execute well or, have uncharacteristic turnovers or blow coverages on defense? And the answer is nothing. They've shown us absolutely nothing that would lead us to believe that they're going to come out and lay an egg.
That is the only thing that worries me, frankly, about this game for Indiana, is that they haven't shown any of that all year. Everybody's kind of looking at them and saying exactly what you just said, which is look at all these stats, look at how they played all year. Kurt Cignetti has created a machine, and they don't beat themselves. And why would they do that now? But this is college football. And then typically when you're saying all that, everybody's blowing smoke up your you-know-what, and you've got all these stats in your favor. That's when a team lays an egg. But I'm with you. I don't see Indiana laying an egg in this game. I think that some teams and some programs, some coaches are just built different. And it seems like Cignetti, with what he's done at Indiana, he has just built this team and this program differently with a whole bunch of 3-stars, which is just unbelievably impressive what he has been able to do with them. And I mean, I think, yes, I think you're right that there is that at play here where they're 30-20 earlier this year in Eugene, but beating a team a second time it is tough to beat a team a second time. However, I trust Cignetti. Like, why would I not trust Sig at this point to get it done? It feels like this is that Indiana is really in a category of their own in terms of the trust that you can put in them, much like we've talked about this before. Cignetti, what he's building at Indiana really feels like what Alabama had under Nick Saban and the Death Star. And, okay, these guys are getting off the bus and you just kind of feel like you're at a disadvantage already because they're going to be the most disciplined team on the field. They're going to be the most prepared team on the field. And they've already gotten it done once. And by the way, that game was on the road, right? Mentioned it. It was in Eugene. So they are at an advantage now in the sense that this is a neutral site game. So, yeah, for me, it's hard. And you got the Heisman winning quarterback. You got Omar Cooper Jr. You got these running backs. I mean, and the defense is playing lights out. So I find it hard to pick against Indiana.
Yeah, and you bring up the neutral site. So this is the Peach Bowl in Atlanta in Mercedes-Benz. And I don't know anything about this, but I've seen some people saying that Atlanta is a hotbed for Hoosier graduates, which wouldn't really surprise me. I mean, it's a big city, and Indiana has a ton of graduates. They're a massive university. So I'm interested to see that dynamic because it wouldn't shock me if this is at least 60-40 Indiana, because not only the alumni base, but just this is their first time. They've never been here, right? This is the first time they're in this spot. And you bring up the Oregon. Oregon's been all over the place, going to Miami last week, now to Atlanta, and then possibly a third trip were they to win. So this kind of feels like, it could be a heavily Indiana crowd. And yeah, I just look at this Indiana team and look, I foolishly picked against them last week. I did think they would beat Alabama. I think, Alabama had a lot of flaws, and I didn't see them, beating Indiana, but I thought the spread was too big, and that was incredibly wrong, obviously. So I'm not picking against the Hoosiers again. I think they will beat Oregon, and I think they will cover this. I think, the only thing that would worry me as a Hoosier fan, if I were one, would be, I do think Dante Moore is very good, and he is capable of having, a heroic or historic type of performance. But that's kind of the only thing. And again, that said, he's really good, but he's not really done that. He's had a great season, and he'll be a high draft pick if he declares, but he's also not, what we saw Trinidad Chambliss do last week. Dante Moore has never done that. I think he's capable of it, but he's never shown it for sure. So you're talking about, a once in a lifetime QB performance, and that's what it, would take to win. And that's hard to see playing out.
Well, you bring up a good point. There is the one game early in the season, you could say Dante Moore led the comeback in part against Penn State.
Yep.
But Penn State, ended up not being such a good team at all. But they were at full strength at that time. Drew Aller, the team was healthy. It was early in the season. So give him credit on that one. But other than that, if it comes down to it, I have seen Fernando Mendoza pull out clutch play after clutch play, clutch moment throughout the entire season. You can go back, Indiana against Penn State as well. Omar Cooper Jr. in the back of the end zone, the Heisman moment, right, for Fernando Mendoza. And then the other one as well in the Big Ten championship against Ohio State, when he throws that ball to get the first down, that was just perfect, on the money, beautiful. So if it comes down to it, I'm going with Fernando Mendoza in the clutch moments when the plays need to be made. I trust Fernando Mendoza more than I do Dante Moore at this point. And I just think we've seen that, on national TV more from Fernando Mendoza than we've seen it from Dante Moore. And I guess that's an obvious one, right? I'm going to trust the Heisman guy over Dante Moore. Again, not to say he's not good. I think Dante Moore is a good quarterback, but in games like this, where the lights are shining brightest, and we've already seen Fernando Mendoza step up when the lights are shining brightest against a team like Ohio State, a juggernaut, blue blood type of team, type of program, he's already done it. So he's not going to be scared of this moment. And so I think that with all those factors and what they just did against Alabama, hey, you just took down one of those. You took down Ohio State, a blue blood in the Big Ten championship game. You took down a massive blue blood in Alabama, the blue blood of the sport. Absolutely beat the tar out of them last week. This team is brimming with confidence, and I feel like Oregon's probably going to get one under Lanning, but I'm not sure it's this year.
Yeah, one final thing, at least on my end, about this game. We've talked about this in other matchups, and it's been, of course, the main storyline in many ways on the Ole Miss side of things. But both Oregon coordinators are now head coaches, Power 5 head coaches, with Will Stein at Kentucky, and I can't remember the DC's name, but he's at Cal. So, again, I don't know how big of an impact that makes. I think it varies case by case, but Indiana's not dealing with that. Indiana's staff is, as far as I know, in place and will be next year, and isn't trying to recruit transfers to their next destination and retain their roster, which Will Stein and the Oregon DC are dealing with. So that's another thing that I think, plays a role here, and just that, and again, who knows what the impact is, but it could be one play, right? It could be one bad call or one misfire on either end of the ball, and it could cost them. So something to look out for.
That's a very good point. We have seen that has been an issue. And to Indiana's credit, they announced that they had increased the amount of money for their staff pool for Cignetti in order to try to prevent a scenario like this, and also to try to give some continuity to the program over the next couple of years. And if they keep playing like this, I don't think, any amount of money is really going to keep some of those guys on the sidelines at Indiana. They're going to get their head coaching shots. But, They are trying to mitigate that. Some programs I think are trying to do that, but at the end of the day, you're still getting a couple $1 million raise. But Indiana did put a lot of money into their coaching staff pool in order to retain those guys, and it looks like, at least right now, that's paying off.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next game. This one's the one everybody's been waiting for. A bunch of you watching us over on our friend Stephen Willis's channel, Locked On Ole Miss, does a great job over there. Also, we will be doing a show tonight, SEC After Dark, at the regular time, I believe. Mike, help me in the comments if that's the case. But I think we're doing it 9 Eastern, 8 Central, which is our typical time on Thursdays. But we're doing it tonight, a day early, because we've got the games starting tomorrow. So we want to preview those games on SEC After Dark. So you guys can join us after we get off here. We get off here at 7 o'clock Central, and then we'll start again in an hour at 8 o'clock Central for SEC After Dark. So you guys can join us for that as well. But Ole Miss, Miami, can't wait for this game. Going to be a blast. We just saw Trinidad Chambliss and the Ole Miss Rebels take down Georgia in an instant classic. Unbelievable game, gunslinger, quarterback duel. Trinidad Chambliss plays, just couldn't believe what I was watching between him and Gunnar Stockton and some of the throws that Trinidad Chambliss made down the stretch. Just an awesome, awesome game. Miami takes down Ohio State 24-14. Their defense is playing incredible right now. Their front seven looks completely unblockable, and they've only given up 8.5 points in the college football playoffs so far. And part of that can be credited to Texas A&M for laying an absolute complete egg and just a joke of an offensive performance in Kyle Field in the opening round, but still only gave up 14 points to Ohio State. So this Ole Miss defense is playing, I would say right now, the best in the college football playoff, maybe aside from Indiana. Indiana might have something to say about that, but Miami playing unbelievable. Is Ole Miss able to get over that hump? Are they able to block Messidor, and are they able to block Bain? I don't know. What are your thoughts on this game? I know you put a lot together on the stats side, so let's hear what you're thinking.
Yeah, so I did want to get to this real quick. Our good friend Mike Huseman of Offseason After Dark and SEC After Dark. Mike, I regret to inform you, I cannot make the show tonight. I have a Bible study every Wednesday night, so I will be not showing my face, entering witness protection program after my bowl picks, because I believe I am. Let me just do some real quick back of the napkin math here. So 2-10 last week, 1-13 the prior week. So we're looking at 3-23.
Oh, Hammer's already entering witness protection. It looks like he's frozen. His internet may have kicked him out. Goodness gracious.
Hammer, Oregon.
He's back.
I cannot pick any of these games.
You're back. You were frozen.
I cut out there for a second.
Yeah, you're back though. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, moral of the story. I picked Indiana, so if you're smart out there, you'll throw a lot of money on Oregon. Unfortunately, I won't be on SEC After Dark, so I will not be showing face, and I will be hiding and running away. But this game, again, I ran through all those same statistical categories for both of these teams. Similarly, it profiles much in Miami's favor. So Miami's a much better turnover margin, sitting there at number 10 in the country. Ole Miss is at 70. Miami total defense, number 10. Ole Miss 41. The third down conversion, they're pretty close on offense. Defense slightly favors Miami. They were 11th in the country at 31%. Ole Miss 31st at 35%. So both pretty good third down defenses. Ole Miss is good. You bring up the defensive line. Ole Miss is good at not allowing sacks. They're 18th in the country in sacks allowed. I think a lot of that has to do with Trinidad Chambliss, his legs, his escapability. So that's kind of what I'm watching in this game. You brought it up. Miami's defensive line has wrecked 2 games thus far in the college football playoff against 2 what were thought to be very, very good, probably top 10 caliber offensive lines in both A&M and Ohio State. So Miami had no trouble bullying those 2 teams up front. I think they probably will be able to do similar things against Ole Miss. Then, the second half of that is, okay, well, but can they actually get Trinidad Chambliss to the ground, or is he going to escape the pocket and make big plays downfield like we saw against Georgia? I think obviously that's a key in this game because that's kind of where Ole Miss thrives. The one thing I didn't include in this, statistical comparison is explosive plays, and obviously it will not surprise anyone. Ole Miss is depending on what you define as an explosive play, if it's 20 yards or this yardage for a run, this yardage for a pass, Ole Miss is like top 3 no matter how you spin it, because obviously they are great at explosive plays. They always have been under Kiffin. Obviously he's gone, but Weiss, it's still, the same offense, and they thrive on explosive plays, and that's how they get you. So the keys to this one for me, like I just said, is, Ole Miss O-line against that D-line / Trinidad Chambliss, his escapability, and then, okay, can Ole Miss hit the big play? Because if this game is played more so straight up where Miami doesn't give up any big plays and it is kind of a grinded out game, that obviously favors Miami with just the way that they play. I mean, that's their game. They're not good at explosive plays on offense at all. Beck doesn't push the ball downfield much. So they need a game or want a game that is played, inside kind of the hash marks, right? And physicality, and Ole Miss definitely wants one that's more run and gun. So I'm interested to see how that dynamic plays out.
For sure. I'm wondering about Miami. Ole Miss is going to score in this game. I don't think Miami is going to be able to hold them to 14 points like they did Ohio State. I think that Julian Sayin was overmatched in that game. I think we talked about this last week. The Ohio State schedule, I think it came into play here. You really didn't play. You played Texas in week 1. You played Iowa in the middle of the year, and then you got your best games in the last 2 games of the year against Indiana and against Miami in the college football playoff. So, and they did not look good. They did not look prepared. And so you look at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is very battle tested. Ole Miss. We talked about Georgia's defense at the end of the year, coming into the SEC title game and then into the college football playoff, where their defense was rounding into form, and they stuck it to Alabama. And if you go back and look at their last few games, in the last 3 or 4 games of the season, that Georgia defense was playing very, very well. We talked about on this show that they were really rounding into form. And what did Ole Miss do? Ole Miss just scored 39 points on those guys. And I know, a little bit of that was the safety. So really 37.
37, yeah.
37. But at the end of the day, they just scored 37 on that Georgia defense. So Ole Miss is going to be able to score. This Miami defense, I know they're playing very well right now, but they're going to score points. Ole Miss is going to score in the 20s at a minimum, just because of how good this offense is. They're battle tested, but also, this is the second point I want to get to. Trinidad Chambliss has the hot hand. I mean, this kid is playing lights out right now. He's making every throw that you want him to make. He's impossible to get down in the backfield. 0 sacks for Georgia. I don't think that happens again. I think Ruben Bain and I think Messidor are going to be able to get home at least a little bit, Keontae Scott, et cetera. But I don't think this is a 7-sack game for Miami like it was against Texas A&M. I think they'd probably get to him twice, maybe, right? But if I'm looking at, the quarterback duel here, I'm going with Trinidad Chambliss still, without a doubt. Even with all of Carson Beck's experience, Trinidad Chambliss right now has the hot hand, and he's looking like, one of those people or one of those players who is kind of transcendent and could carry a team, put the team on his back and carry him to a national title. So to me, the question is, can Miami keep up? because the Ole Miss defense is very good as well. Carson Beck, turnover prone. Is Ole Miss able to get a couple turnovers, 1 or 2 turnovers, right, against Carson Beck? And are they able to protect the ball? Because as you said, the turnover margin, we talked about this before, Miami 10th in the country in turnover margin. Even though Carson Beck has those turnover issues, they also get turnovers on defense. So is Ole Miss able to protect the ball? Because they really got to protect the ball in this game. 70th in turnover margin, as you have on the sheet here for Ole Miss. So that's the questions I'm looking at. The final one that I'm really keyed in on here is Kawan Lacey has also been playing incredible football. He's running the ball downhill. He's fast. He's twitchy. He's doing everything you want from an Ole Miss running back, from a running back on any team in the playoff. And 98 yards, 2 touchdowns on 22 carries against Georgia in the quarterfinal. Miami, one of the best run defenses in the country, only giving up 84 yards a game, number 1 rush defense in the ACC. What gives? What gives there? As you said, they want to play it within the hash marks. Miami's defense really likes to kind of jumble everything up in the middle. I don't know. We'll see. I think that's a big question and something I'm going to watch. This offensive line able to get some push? Are they able to get Kawan Lacey into some space? Is Kawan Lacey able to pop off a couple runs, 5, 8, 10, 12 yards? Is he able to get an explosive play? That's something I'm going to be watching because obviously that opens up the passing lanes as well for Trinidad Chambliss and for Stribling and all those weapons they have on the outside. So that's a big question for me for Ole Miss and for Miami is, what gives on those couple of questions. And I think that's where this game is going to be won or lost.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point because I'm with you. I anticipate Ole Miss will be able to score in this game, but they're going to need, similar to Georgia. It's not that they ran all over Georgia, but they were, effective enough, right? Lacey finishes with 90-something yards. I mean, if Lacey can get about that again, like give me a 20 carry, 90 yard, 25 carry, 100 yard game, I feel pretty good about where that would put Ole Miss, because the one thing they can't do is against this Miami defensive line is get behind the sticks, right? You cannot be stuck in 3rd and long, obvious passing downs all night because those guys will get after you regardless of how mobile you are. At the quarterback position, they'll get after you. So Ole Miss has to be able, to at least gain some yardage on the ground and keep those 3rd downs manageable, as well as just moving the sticks in short yardage. One other thing I'm looking at in this game, again, to go back to the explosive plays, because Miami defensively is good in the red zone. They're number 25 in red zone defense, and Ole Miss is 59th in red zone offense. Now, I suspect a lot of that has to do with, the sort of Kiffin aggressive philosophy, and they're probably, because this is just the stat I was just looking at was just points. So how many drives you get in the red zone, do you get points? So field goals still count. So Ole Miss being 59th there at 86% makes me think that most of the ones, that they're not, it's not that they're turning the ball over, it's that they're going for it a lot and coming up short sometimes. But I'm just curious to see if that comes into play, where maybe Ole Miss does hit some explosives, but like we saw in the A&M game, when A&M, hit an explosive play early to Craver, got down there, got stuffed, right? Couldn't punch it in. And then late in the game, obviously they drive all the way down there, throw the interception, get stuffed at the goal line. Miami's defense is good in that tight box area. So if Ole Miss can get explosive plays, it's also important that either they just finish the drive, if they can't punch it in on the big play, or that the big plays result in a touchdown, because don't be shocked if, you look up at whatever halftime through the 3rd quarter and Ole Miss has a yardage advantage over Miami, but they don't necessarily have an advantage on the scoreboard because Miami's defense is bowing up when, the field shrinks on them. So that's another thing I'm looking out for in this one. But I guess, again, without me being on SEC After Dark, I will go ahead and get my pick. I'm obviously going with Ole Miss. You mentioned it before, right? We're rooting for him. What a story it would be. And you brought up it's all, to me, it all just hinges on Chambliss. I mean, there's no guarantee he can repeat what he did against Georgia, but he seems to be playing great. I like him over Beck in this matchup as much as we have praised Beck for his 2 games so far and kind of just being a game manager. I think because Ole Miss will score, they're going to need more from Beck in this game than what he's shown. And I just love what Ole Miss has going right now. So give me the Rebs.
I like it. Another thing to mention, and Ole Miss folks, you guys know this, but for others who haven't been paying as close attention, there's still a lot of craziness going around the Ole Miss program with Lane Kiffin, LSU's coaches going back to Baton Rouge, coaches recruiting for LSU. Pete Golding, by the way, we're going to talk about transfer portal here in just a minute. He is red hot, winning the breakup, as Chris Marlar said, and he's right about that, at least currently, right? Doing an incredible job of re-signing kids, getting kids out of the portal, including some LSU guys. So he's done a great job with that. But the reason I wanted to mention that is because Charlie Weiss Jr. has stuck to his guns and said, I'm going to be with Ole Miss through the playoff run. And so with Trinidad Chambliss with the hot hand and Charlie Weiss Jr., that tandem right there seems to be, thick as thieves, Batman and Robin right now, as good as anybody in the country in terms of quarterback and OC relationship and, what they're thinking on the field, et cetera. Trinidad Chambliss seems to be, he knows what Charlie Weiss Jr. is thinking right now and vice versa. So I think that's a big thing for Ole Miss and gives them a leg up in this game. And I'm excited to watch it. I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. One last thing on that, just the offensive coaches. So Joe Cox, the tight ends coach, and George McDonald, who is the wide receivers coach and I believe passing game coordinator at Ole Miss, are done. There was sort of after the Sugar Bowl, there was that, like you said, things were up in the air with who was going to be able to continue because the transfer portal was opening. Obviously, Weiss Jr. Is continuing, sticking to his guns, but those 2 guys, I assume Kiffin, is the one that dropped the hammer, but they are done. They're fully moved on with LSU. So Ole Miss is down, a tight end coach and wide receiver and passing game coordinator. So hopefully that doesn't come back to bite him. Golding, if you've been watching his press conferences, obviously is confident, doesn't, does not feel at all that it's going to impact them, but those 2 guys will not be, on the sidelines for this
right.
one.
Yeah, we'll see. Not the big guys, not the coordinators, not the top dogs, but your position coach matters a lot, especially right. Hey, you run a wrong route or you miss a block or whatever, you come off the field. Who's the first person you go to? It's your position coach because they're the ones closest to your unit throughout the whole season. So that will be interesting to see if that matters at all. All right, let's move on to the transfer portal. Transfer portal is absolute and total madness. It's hard to even keep up right now. I want to show this before we get into it here. This is a tweet from Chris Marlar, who we just mentioned. And this is a couple days old. So this isn't even, totally correct right now, but Auburn facing an absolute exodus, Mississippi State facing an exodus, Arkansas, just their annual exodus at this point. Yeah. Florida having a lot of trouble. LSU, I think, Lane Kiffin kind of trying to clear house here. Tennessee, a little bit surprisingly, has had some guys leave. We talked about that one last week, like Lance Hurd.
Yep.
He's in the transfer portal. Texas had a few questionable ones in the portal as well. And again, as I mentioned earlier, Pete Golding, 3 Ole Miss kids in the portal right now. Maybe that's because they're in the middle of their playoff run. But at the same time, you've got Austin Simmons, entered the portal during the playoff run because the window's only open for so long. You got to be taking visits, et cetera. So impressive work by Pete Golding so far with what he has done at Ole Miss. I think we want to talk about a little bit about some of the main, players who are in the portal, some of the interesting ones who have entered. I think we also want to get into the DeMond Williams situation at Washington because I think it involves, obviously, everyone's mind immediately went to Lane Kiffin and LSU because he was committed to Ole Miss at one point, and Lane Kiffin, and then he goes into the portal after signing a contract and everything. So why don't we start with that? And then we can get to some of the names that we want to mention who have entered the portal. Also some hot and cold. Who's hot in the portal? Who's cold in the portal? Et cetera. But yeah, just to quickly lay it out, the Damon Williams situation, I haven't been able to read into it too deeply, but what I have gathered is that he signs a contract with Washington to return to the Huskies. Played very well this year. He would have been highly sought after in the portal had he entered, but doesn't enter, signs a contract, and says, I'm going to be back. Hopefully it was announced. Huskies announced it, all this stuff. And then yesterday, he surprisingly enters the portal with a do not contact tag, which most of you probably know what that is. But for those who do not, it means that he already has an idea in mind as to where he's going to be going. And to me, at this point, just a quick aside here, the do not contact tag to me means that you were tampered with. It's just the tampering tag.
Correct.
It just tells you that I'm entering the portal and I have been tampered with. And, some other coach over here, whatever school I commit to is the school that tampered with me. So anyway, that aside, he enters the portal with a do not contact tag. He is not committed to a school yet, as far as I'm aware. Unless, did you see something before we go?
No. So that's sort of where it gets messy. He technically hasn't entered the portal because Washington has not allowed him to enter. So my understanding is, you're right, he signs a deal with Washington, reportedly $4 million. Part of the deal, in what I read, I believe this was from Dellinger, this is a pretty standard rev share agreement contract across the Big Ten. One of the clauses in there states that a player cannot enter the transfer portal. So Williams announces this, and Washington has not filed the paperwork and let him enter the portal because they are crying foul that he's not able to enter the portal. So then, to take it further into the tampering conversation, Washington, I believe, is now saying that since he's not technically in the portal, teams are not able to contact him. And Washington is claiming they know for a fact that teams are contacting him, and they intend to report these, tampering allegations to the NCAA, which, LOL, good luck with that.
Good luck.
Right. So my read on this, first of all, it's I hate it, right? It sucks for everybody. I mean, for Washington, obviously, and I don't have a ton of sympathy for the kid. I mean, he signed a $4 million deal and now he's trying to back out on it, but he's probably trying to back out on it because someone offered him a bigger deal, right? So, the issue here is, and this is what anybody who has a brain will just keep pointing out, is whether or not this contract that he signed states that he can't enter the portal, I just don't know how enforceable it is, right? Like, we keep coming back to this with all this, whether it's transfer portal or NIL deals or whatever. It's, dude, these aren't employees. They are not employees. They don't, and if you want them to be employees, then do that. But the thing is, these schools don't want them to be employees, so they're trying all these, different tactics to essentially treat them as employees without them being employees, but they aren't. So I don't know how this ends. My assumption is this ends with him at LSU, because you brought up Lane Kiffin and LSU, and of course that's where all the smoke is. And that smoke is there, like you said, because Kiffin has a relationship with him, but also because right about the time that he did, renege on his contract and say he planned to enter the portal with a do not contact tag, that was on the heels of Brendan Sorsby committing to Texas Tech, who had visited LSU, Trinidad Chambliss re-signing with Ole Miss, who, obviously there's a Lane Kiffin connection there. And, for whatever it's worth, Van Buren was already in the portal, and he's since committed to USF. So LSU doesn't have a quarterback, right? Garrett Nussmeier's gone. They don't have a quarterback. And I'm sure Lane will get that figured out. I've literally no doubt that whoever plays quarterback for LSU is going to have a good season next year. But just the way the dominoes are falling, all signs point to LSU, because they don't have a quarterback. They've had guys on campus. It hasn't worked out. And it kind of feels like the only, big name, so to speak, that would still be out there is Sam Leavitt, who was in Baton Rouge yesterday. But again, all signs are pointing to this is LSU trying to lure Williams away from Washington. And my guess is that's where he ends up, because I just don't really know what Washington has here.
Well, to some degree, Lane Kiffin better hope he ends up in Baton Rouge, because there were tweets about this. You saw the pictures that came out. For folks who didn't, Sam Levitt is on the sideline of courtside at the LSU basketball game with Lane Kiffin and Knox and Whit Weeks. And Sam Levitt is looking at his phone, and people were captioning it basically like his agent telling him, bail, like get out of there, like they're going after Damon Williams at Washington, like you're not the guy, like we're going to Tennessee. Like he's his visit with Josh Heupel to Tennessee while he's sitting next to Lane Kiffin, which he apparently is supposed to be at Tennessee. Either he was supposed to be at Tennessee today or tomorrow. But on that front, like Lane Kiffin's flirting with everybody. He's well known for that. Literally flirts with everybody. So he could end up kind of getting left at the dance if he doesn't get Damon Williams. Sam Levitt, if I'm Sam Levitt, I'm like, okay, like screw you, whatever this was about. Maybe I'm going to go to Tennessee. I don't know, but I don't know if I'm going to LSU. Like that was kind of embarrassing. And so he might get left without Sam Levitt, might get left without Damon Williams. I mean, at the end of the day, right, it's probably the money that matters, right? If Damon Williams can't go in the portal, or Washington fights this legal battle, it becomes some protracted, prolonged thing. Well, maybe it's, okay, we'll offer Sam Levitt another $500,000 and he's probably come to LSU, right? Like, so maybe it's not a problem at all, but it will be interesting to watch that. And there are a lot of good quarterbacks in the portal right now. So you have, it's not like, option 1 and option 2, if you have to go to option 2 is bad, or if you have to go to option 5 is bad. There are a lot of elite potential quarterbacks in the portal right now, which I think we can move on now. Are there any so far, or at least in the last couple of days, that have stood out to you in terms of players entering the portal? Are you surprised by any? By the way, before you get into that quickly, today, I think this afternoon, Ty Simpson announces he's going to the NFL draft. Some smoke that he was maybe flirting with Tennessee potentially. Maybe he was thinking about coming back to Alabama. I personally don't think there was anything to the Tennessee rumors, but I'm not an insider. That would have really surprised me. He was an Alabama guy through and through, so it kind of felt like Alabama or he's going to the NFL. Announces he's going to the NFL today, so that leaves Austin Mack, Keelan Russell potentially in line, unless Kalen DeBoer feels like he needs to go into the portal to get somebody else. But that was one that stuck out to me today. Are there any couple others that you've been looking at who stuck out to you?
Not necessarily with guys entering over the last couple of days, but Damon Wilson actually did surprise me. The Missouri edge, former Georgia edge, that was surprising. He had a great year at Missouri, and again, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes or what his NIL deal was like with Mizzou, what he thinks he could get on the market. I'm sure he'll be highly coveted, but again, just kind of stinks, right? He went to Georgia, didn't get a ton of run, so he goes to Mizzou, has a great season, and then bam, back in the portal again, like kind of, mercenary stuff. But that's the game these days, right? I don't know what I say. Don't hate the player, hate the game. That's the game. So that surprised me to see him enter, just given how this year went for him and, the opportunity that Missouri gave him. But maybe he thinks he can get more elsewhere or go, be on a better team, I suppose. I don't know. But that surprised me a little bit. But I did think just on the, now we're starting to get the commitments, right? So a few names that stood out to me, Trey Wilson, the wide receiver from Florida, going to LSU. It's a pretty good get for Lane Kiffin. Again, not surprising. A wide receiver going to play for Lane Kiffin and LSU. That's a good get for them. Hollywood Smothers, the running back out of NC State, going to Alabama. He had a real good year for the Wolfpack, and we know that Alabama needs help at running back because they couldn't run it this year. Jam Miller off to the NFL. I think there was one Bama back that entered, not I can't even think of who their kind of second and third stringers were this year, but
Yeah.
it was not one of them. It was a back, further on the depth chart. But anyway, I think Hollywood Smothers is a good player and can help Alabama next year immediately. And then the one that everybody had on their bingo board, Byron Brown, following Golesh from USF to Auburn. That is now official. So I think it's a good get for Auburn. I mean, again, everyone saw it coming, so it's not a surprise, but I think that kid can play, and let me put it this way. He'll be better than what Auburn has had at quarterback in the entire Hugh Freeze era. So they got an upgrade at quarterback.
Well, and to just emphasize that point, we have seen portal quarterbacks who follow their coach do a pretty good job. I mean, it's not like – sorry, I don't know what was going on outside, but there are – yes, we have seen portal quarterbacks who follow their coach do pretty well. They know the system, right?
Right.
So they can just plug right in. And so even if, talent-wise, you may not feel like their profile is at the top level of the sport, they have a leg up because they know your system, right? Also, by the way, one thing that I was talking with our family about before I left and came back to Texas, think about the College Football Playoff right now. Who are the last 4 teams standing? All 4 of them have a transfer quarterback.
Yeah.
And not only that, but last season, Ohio State won the national championship with a 1-year hired gun transfer quarterback.
Yeah.
So that's just where the sport is going. And you kind of have to look at, you have to evaluate every single year, even if you have a guy who is like a Ty Simpson level of athlete or player, right? Like Ty Simpson had a pretty good year, but Alabama didn't go to the heights that they want to get to. That Alabama's championship or bust program. So even Alabama has to think about it and look and be like, maybe we should go in the portal. Maybe there's somebody better, right? Especially with the data we have now that is showing that transfer portal quarterbacks are the ones that are getting it done and that you can upgrade. So I'm interested to see what it looks like with Byron Brown at Auburn with Alex Golesh reuniting with him. Sticking on Auburn for a second, Auburn has a ton of kids in the portal, some that are surprising. Golesh has not been able to keep some of that talent on campus that I'm sure he wanted to keep on campus, but he's now just importing the entire USF roster, is what it seems like. There's a lot of USF kids who are going to Auburn. Not too much of a surprise, but at the same time, that's who he's backfilling with. Look, I don't know. If I'm an Auburn fan, I'm a little bit nervous, right? Like USF, you were great at USF, but I don't know if the USF kids are going to get it done at an SEC level to try and get us from, getting out of that 6-win pit that we have been in for so long. We need to get above 6 wins. We're trying to win 8, 9, and get eventually back to where we want to be, which is 10 wins in the College Football Playoff, et cetera. So interested to see how that plays out. Interested to see where Alex Golesh goes in a couple of these different directions, if he keeps pulling in USF players or if he goes outside of USF and starts to get in a couple of others. The big one's still out on the board, Cam Coleman.
Yeah.
Cam Coleman's still out there. Had a Texas visit, had a Texas A&M visit. Looks like USC's in the mix as well. And I think he went, potential, I'm not sure this was rumored, but potentially went on an Alabama visit as well. So he is the big fish that is still out there. He's going to command a ton of money from the portal, and we'll see what happens there. But, yeah, there's tons of names. I think a couple of the winners so far, I've looked at a couple of guys that Missouri has picked up. Looking pretty good for Drink doing a good job in the portal again. Mike Elko looks like he is very focused on the trenches. He is bolstering that defensive line. They're losing a couple along the defensive line from this year's team. Albert Regis is going to be gone. Cassius Howell is going to be gone. They also lost a couple in the transfer portal as well that were not expected. Ryland Kennedy went into the portal. So he's backfilling. He's focused very much on the trenches and also on the offensive line. Losing a couple on the offensive line for the Aggies. He's gotten a few big ones. Tyree Adams today being one of them from LSU. And he just got another one, I think, from Alabama.
Formby. Yeah. He started at right tackle all year for Bama. So, yes, again, I think we're seeing across the board, I would agree, Elko's doing a good job. I think we're seeing across the board just guys that, that started and played a ton of snaps for their teams entering, which is, just a little surprising. It makes you wonder two things. One, again, is that just the game these days? You hit the portal because you can and see if you can get more money, or, is there something more behind that of, okay, maybe there's someone behind them on the depth chart we don't know about who's going to take their spot type of thing. Because Formby, the Alabama offensive lineman, started again, I think all season for them. He hits the portal, goes to A&M. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the Tennessee tackle, all SEC starter for them, hits the portal, and you're thinking, okay, why is this guy hitting the portal? Like, Trey Wisner, the Texas starting running back, Mike brings him up. He's already committed to FSU, but it's like, okay, why is, this guy's a multi-year starter. Why is he leaving Texas? Like what's going on that we don't know about? If there is anything, right? Again, maybe it is just as simple as, let me maximize my value and test the market. But it feels very much like whether you're Alabama or Tennessee or Texas, you're not going to get outbid for these guys unless, you don't want them that bad, or unless somebody is, bidding crazy numbers that you're not willing to match. But in a lot of these cases, at least the Trey Wisner one, that doesn't really feel like what happened to me. Well, if you're a sicko and you like to read like Orange Bloods or whatnot, they were convinced they were getting Jaden Ball, which is not the case because he has re-signed at Florida. But that could very well be, right? Trey Wisner, multi-year starter, starts hearing all this stuff, hearing from his agent, like, hey, dude, you see what they're trying to offer Jaden Ball, which I'm sure they offered him, even though he never officially entered the portal. Right. And Wisner's like, A, I'm the 2-year starter, and B, that's a lot more money than they're giving me, so I'm out of here. Similar with Parker Livingstone, right? The receiver who commits to Oklahoma, which is kind of the ultimate stab in the back for the Horns fans. But the word on the street was they basically told him, like, again, I don't know if it's a money thing or playing time, but just like, hey, dude, we're trying to recruit over you, and we're not that interested in retaining you, is what the word on the street was. And so he's like, okay, well, I'll hit the portal, and screw you, I'm going to go to Oklahoma, like really show you. So that's another one to keep an eye on, because Texas has lost a lot of guys. They had another tight end into the portal today, and a linebacker from the class of 25, who I think was a 4 or 5 star. So it's like, again, what these guys entering the portal for? They're either starters or they're players that, had were high profile and just didn't really play that much or pop, but we're still very young. It's not like they, had spent 3 years on the roster and didn't get a run and, want to go play somewhere. It's like, dude, this guy, you were a true freshman last year playing behind Anthony Hill and the other starting linebackers in the portal, Liafu or whatever his name is. It's like, of course you're not going to play, dude. So why are you now hitting the portal? Because certainly you didn't expect to play last year, but he's in the portal. Liafu's in the portal. Livingstone left. Wisner left. CJ Baxter left. Like, Texas has money, and their fans certainly are expecting big dominoes to fall their way in the transfer portal. Cam Coleman possibly one, but up to this point, that has not happened. They haven't really gotten anybody of note that I've seen.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, another name, Alabama's losing names. I can't ever say his name, but Qua Russell, the linebacker, leaves. I mean, some guys who really contributed this year, Keon Keeley along the defensive line. Like, again, like, why are you entering the portal? Like, I guess you're chasing dollars, but you're going to start again for Alabama. Like, what are you, run it back. Like, let's go get a national championship next year. It's just an odd time in college football, which also leads us to quickly the new calendar. So we should just touch on this, for a second here.
Yeah.
But the Ross Dellinger, he's basically, the NCAA has heard the coaches. Sounds like they have been making a serious, stink about this as they have in the media. And so looks like the college football calendar is changing. It is pretty ridiculous that we're talking about 4 coaches right now who are in the college football playoff in the semifinals. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're, taking their team as far as they possibly can. And now they're also having to deal with recruiting and portal and all this craziness. Like there's just no – so there needs to be some changes to it. And it sounds like those changes are going to be coming. Maybe week 0 moves up. The college football playoff dates are potentially changing, potentially getting rid of the I think it was the early signing day, moving the signing day back. Lots of different movements. So it looks like some potential changes are coming down the pipeline, and I think it's much needed. I think there's some pretty large changes that need to be made to the calendar in order to make all this work. And obviously, it's all difficult as well because these kids are in school, college, these universities, and so you also have to deal with the academic calendar, and so that's always where the issue lies. But anyway, any quick thoughts on the calendar?
I think, as you said, change is needed. So I'm glad that they're going to try to address this one way or the other. I think probably moving the signing period back to February makes sense. I also think, I don't necessarily love this idea, but I don't know with the college football playoff, expanding to 12, likely more down the road, how you avoid it. And that is, I think whatever week 0 is, as my dogs sound off.
He's not happy about the calendar and he wants to change.
Right. Will become week 1, right? I think you to get these games in, you're just going to have to move the starting point up. And then again, it's tough because these kids are in school. And so it's finals in early December, but I think you just got to start playing playoff games, like the coaches talked about having all the time off, how that's an issue. Again, you're dealing with Christmas break and finals and holidays and all this stuff. But like at the end of the day, man, the calendar is messed up. These teams don't need darn near a month off between, the end of the regular season and their first playoff game. Like, get them started. And I like what Lanning said when he said New Year's Eve, New Year's Day should be the end of the season. Be done. Close it up. And if that would make sense, if you have your signing day in February, that would give coaches, a month plus, even if they were in the national title game, to get that stuff figured out at their future job and not have to be dealing with it simultaneously.
Yeah, no doubt. Athletes Forum podcast. Thanks for joining us tonight, guys. Army Navy week, move that to week 0. I kind of like that. I'm not sure if I think it might have to happen. I do love it for the fact that it's its standalone own thing. I love that tradition, but we may have to move it around. I understand what you're saying there. Move conference championship up a week and playoffs to follow. I agree. Too much time in between, conference championship games, playoffs. The schedule's too weird. We got to fix that. Especially, we talked about this last week, right? All the teams that get the bye, except for Indiana, 1-7 for the teams that get the bye. The only team that has won, that has gotten a bye, is Kurt Cignetti's Indiana team, who steamrolled Indiana. So, look, I that's kind of on those teams for losing those games. But at the end of the day, the data's there. The proof is in the pudding that you kind of don't want to get a bye, and that's not how it should be. Right.
And to take that a step further, I hate this idea. However, I think it will very much get talked about. And that's just getting rid of conference championships altogether, right?
Hate it. But yeah,
I hate it too. But like you said, it's like, what's the point? If we're going to win our conference, get a bye, and then get smoked in the first round of the playoff, it's not that big of an advantage.
Right.
And, as we saw this year with both the Big Ten and SEC title games, it's like, if all we're playing for is, seeding here, is it that important? I mean, again, I hate it. I love those games. I think there's a lot of pride on the line. And I think that the players and coaches from, Indiana and Georgia would echo that, along with Ohio State and Alabama. But if you're trying to professionalize the sport and make it make sense calendar-wise, that week where you have a very, very, very select few teams playing makes sense as something you would seriously look at to, like, okay, do we need this? And I mean, the conferences will fight tooth and nail to keep it, obviously, because it's a big moneymaker for them. So as long as the conferences are in charge and there's not a commissioner, I don't see them going anywhere. But I just, pains me to say it, but I think that is something far down the road, not in the immediate future, but something, again, that'll get a very close look of, is this worth it?
Right. I would encourage people to go back. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. I think it was when we were talking with Garrett, actually. So maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, when I mentioned, okay, conference championship games, right? But then everybody talks about, well, it actually might be better, like for Ole Miss this year, right? Or Texas A&M, who did not have to play in the conference championship game. They get in. First of all, Notre Dame needs to join a conference. That's the first thing, because this idea doesn't work unless Notre Dame joins the conference, because they get the special treatment.
Yeah.
I don't need to go on another rant. You can find that on YouTube. But I think the other two teams should be playing, right? Like the top 4 teams in the Big Ten, the top 4 teams in the ACC, top 4 teams in the SEC. It's almost like a play-in game to get into the playoff if you have those other 4 teams playing. And then the advantage of, they didn't have to play, right? They got fresh legs going into the playoffs is kind of null and void if they also have to play a game. And those games would be fun, and they would be moneymakers too, right? I mean, Alabama, Georgia in the SEC title game, and then Texas A&M and Ole Miss in the play-in game, essentially, right? Somebody gets eliminated pretty much in that sort of game. I don't know if the conferences would go into that, because you may lose some spots in the college football playoff if you do that. But I do think it would be a lot of fun. So anyway, that's an idea that I threw out a couple weeks ago that could be fun. It's a rough idea. It would need to be refined around the edges, but I think there could be something there. All right, let's move on. We got to keep it to a tight hour here, close to it, because we have SEC After Dark tonight, back at our regularly scheduled time for SEC After Dark, but not our regularly scheduled day, because we got to preview these upcoming college football playoff games, which are going to be a ton of fun. Can't wait to talk some more ball tonight with the guys. Hammer will not be there, but I will. So, all right, let's get into the Muschamp Coach of the Week here. I put this one together. It was kind of a short one. We did a show on Friday for those of you who joined us, as you know. So we had a Muschamp Coach of the Week for that, that was from the quarterfinals. And this week kind of had to pick from a whole lot of nothing, some press conferences and whatever. So I went a little bit outside of the typical realm, but this guy is someone that I'm a huge fan of. He is a great coach, NFL coach, has some SEC ties, or more Big 12 ties rather. But anyway, I loved his quote today, and he was really ticked at himself for the way that his team played and the way that he coached this year. And so he gave himself an F for how he coached this year and how his team played, even though his team was on the verge of the playoffs. And really their problem was the fact that they played in a conference, or in a division that was just the best in the NFL this year. So anyway, here's your Muschamp Coach of the Week. I won't spoil it, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Now, we fell short this year, and look, we all acknowledge that. I acknowledge that. It's bitter, It's a bitter taste. I mean, it feels good to win yesterday, but ultimately it's frustrating, But we got nobody to blame but ourselves. But I really don't believe we're that far off. Not good enough. We didn't get in. I mean, we underachieved, so not good. I would give myself a freaking F.
Give myself a freaking F, says Dan Campbell, head coach of the Detroit Lions, former tight end for the Texas A&M Aggies. He was part of that team that won the Big 12 championship all the way back in 1998. So, I get it. Aggie jokes. Last Big 12
conference title, baby.
Last conference title. The head coach of the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, was on that team. But congratulations to Coach Dan Campbell for potentially the last Muschamp Coach of the Week, as we are looking to rename it, because as much as we love Coach Muschamp, it's just really tough for us Aggies to have an award named after the defensive coordinator for the Longhorns.
Yeah. Oh, and the spirit of the award was, the time we christened it, Muschamp was an off-field analyst for Georgia. He was no longer in the college football world, for all intents and purposes. It feels very much different whether he's at Texas or anywhere, but he's going to be back on the sideline. So I think that sort of disqualifies him from, just having the award named after him. But anyway, I love Dan Campbell. That guy, he's the man. Obviously, the Aggie tie helps, but he's like, anytime he does an interview or anything, he's the absolute man. I would love to play for him, and I think his players, feel the same way.
Yeah, I would go to war with Dan Campbell. He could lead me anywhere. I'd follow him straight into a brick wall or straight off a cliff. Wherever Dan Campbell wanted to go, I would go with him. All right, Biscuit of the Week. You put this one together from our good friend. Finally got around to it. We had this one in the hopper for a while here. I'll let you intro it.
Yep. So as you mentioned, this is from our good friend Rick, aka Captain Biscuit Wilmarth. This is an interesting one. So he sent this, as you mentioned, a couple weeks ago. So this is from Biscuit Express in Owens Crossroads, Alabama. And I looked it up. It appears to be, a food truck serving biscuits. And that is a piece of bologna. So as Rick included in his email, biggest, thickest piece of bologna I ever had. Because that is an absolute slab of bologna there. So he's got some like tater tots, a biscuit, and then again a magnificent, thick, giant piece of bologna. So if you're into bologna and are in the Alabama area, I would highly suggest Biscuit Express because it looks delicious. And I will just echo what Rick said. I mean, that's the biggest piece of bologna I've ever seen. So if that's what you're into, go get it. I mean, the only bologna I've ever really had, right, is the one you buy at the store. And those are the razor thin slices. That thing is a chunky piece of bologna.
Yeah, that is bigger than my face. I mean, that piece of bologna is massive. So, yeah, man, Captain Biscuit, thanks for sending that one in. That biscuit looks awesome as well. That's some gravy on the side. There's what it looks like. I mean, gosh, yeah, that looks awesome. So if you were in Owens Crossroads, Alabama, if you're in the area at any point here in the next couple of months, be sure to go check out Biscuit Express and go get yourself a piece of bologna bigger than your fist. Bologna biscuit is big around here, says Rick. I can imagine. I'm all in for that. That looks incredible. So thank you, Rick, for sending in the biscuit of the week, the biggest bologna piece on a biscuit he's ever had from Biscuit Express. And that is going to do it for us. If you guys do want to send us a biscuit of the week, you're welcome to DM us. We love to feature those from our viewers. DM us on Instagram or on Twitter. You can also shoot us an email. We're contact@biscuitssec.com if you would like to be featured. Could be homemade, could be skillet biscuits you made, could be from the oven, whatever you want to do. If you want to send us in a biscuit from your favorite local diner, food truck, what have you, we would love to feature it on the show. As always, folks, biscuitssec.com/newsletter to go sign up for the Morning Biscuits newsletter. One of our favorite things to do around here. We put a lot of effort and work into that. It is free. Newsletter is elite. Thank you from our friend Mike Huseman, who does SEC After Dark, does a fantastic job with that. But yeah, it's all about the SEC. So if you guys love SEC football, love SEC athletics, we keep you up to date on all the goings on around that, as well as everything going on in college athletics. Calendar, as we talked about tonight, we'll touch on that in the newsletter on Friday, get you caught up for all the games. Twice a week during the season, Mondays and Fridays. Soon we will be going to our off-season schedule where we will go only on Wednesdays, but it's free to sign up. So we hope that you guys will join us there. We've got almost 300 of you watching us tonight, so we really appreciate every single one of you joining us tonight. Quickly, After Dark Network, we are part of that. Our friend Stephen Willis at Locked on Ole Miss, he does a great job there. He is the one who put this together. As I mentioned, Offseason After Dark, that typically comes out on Tuesdays in the morning. That's our friend Mike Huseman, also writes for Mike Farrell Sports, does a great job. He doesn't just cover the SEC, also covers ACC, G5, all sorts of football. The guy knows ball. Be sure to check out Offseason After Dark. Also does it during the season. So not just during the offseason, but it goes all the way through the season as well. So be sure to check him out there. SEC After Dark, typically Thursdays, 9 Eastern, 8 Central. But tonight, as I mentioned earlier, we will have a show on Wednesday. So Wednesday night, tonight, join us in a little less than an hour for SEC After Dark as we preview the College Football Playoff games that are coming up tomorrow. And then on Friday, Also, Bama After Dark. Jake Thomas does a great job with Bama After Dark. Go give him a follow at Bama After Dark 2. That is typically on Tuesdays at 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central. You can also check out the Regular Guys pod. That one is on a little bit of a hiatus right now, but you can go follow them for whenever they do make a comeback. That is our friend Corey Burton and Israel Troop, who do a good job whenever they can do a podcast. So thank you to all of you who joined us tonight. We really appreciate it. As always, enjoy the College Football Playoff Semifinals. It's going to be a lot of fun. Go Rebs. We will see you guys for SEC After Dark in a little bit less than an hour. And next week for another show of Biscuits and SEC Live.
Appreciate y'all.